Sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
Find a way to just play consistent football, team football. Offense can be on one game and the defense not playing well. Defense can play well one game and the offense not playing well. We can't have that, that back and forth, throughout the season. We have to be able to play complementary football, and we did that at times and we didn't do it at times. And when we didn't do it, it hurt us. So, moving going forward, I know that's something that, we harped on all year. Hopefully that can be a huge point of emphasis next year if I'm here.
What do you think? So Mackey and Judd, Daily Minnesota Sports, Entertainment, Therapy, Loathing. Do you think Patrick Peterson's back next year?
Probably not. My guess is he's not, because if it's a new coach, which it almost certainly should be, I think Patrick Peterson probably spends the remainder of his career bouncing around. So if I was to put odds on it, I would say no, he's not back.
He's been fine. He's been.
Oh yeah,
he's not what he was 5 years ago. He's been fine. I think it depends on the price.
But he's going to want to play too for a team that's probably got a chance to win if he possibly can. And I think he thought, I think a lot of us thought that the Vikings had that chance. I can't see him being part of a retool, if that's the right word for it. Can you guys?
I think the Vikings got exactly what they wanted out of him. The Vikings knew that he wasn't the same perennial Pro Bowl, all-pro cornerback he used to be. I think Eileen, he is back, but it's definitely not an ink by any means. If he might want to chase a ring and go to a team that's contending, I can see that. But I think they'll try to bring him back, but you wouldn't break the bank for him. You're not going to pay him $11 million, I believe, is what they paid him this year. So you're going to have to say at best, hey man, here's a 1 year, $5 million deal. Come back if you'd like to.
Yeah, I think he's going to line up. Okay, who are the best teams that have openings that are interested in me, and can they pay me even a few $1 million? So I think he's gone, but I'll still listen to his podcast because it's good stuff. Let's do some statements here, boys. Statement Monday after the Vikings made some kind of a statement on national TV last night.
Yep.
Joe, why don't you lead us off here? What's statement number one?
Hey, Dex, can we play the Zim clip about Mond? Because I'd like to start off with Mond.
Yeah, just give me, as I load it in here, just give me
okay, because this is post-game press conference last night, Mond, the poor kid, played a series, and now it seems logical that the coaching staff might want to look at potentially a quarterback of the future, and so Mike was asked about that for next week's regular season finale.
Do you think you want to get a look at Mond next week?
Not particularly.
Mike, why don't you want to get a look at him?
I see him every day.
Here's my statement, Mike. It's Mond time. It's Mond time, and here's what I want. Kirk Cousins very well might be cleared out of the COVID protocols in the coming days and could start that game, which, of course, right now has become a meaningless exhibition game between two terrible teams in the Bears and Vikings. But here's what I want. I want Mond to get all the practice reps this week in practice, to prepare fully, and to get the start. And it's very clear that the head coach does not share my view. And I say, who cares? I think it should come down from the very top. Kellen Mond is going to play Mike. This is our team. You've lost this team. I don't think there's nothing Mike needs to see, so I don't care about Mike. I want Kellen Mond. I want just to see him play. If I don't see, okay, he struggles. He's awful. Who cares? Unless you think you're going to get him hurt, I highly doubt that. Kellen Mond, it's time to play him. And Mike's defiance last night pushes me farther towards saying it's Mond time.
Yeah, I do love the idea of just uncomfortably coming in as an ownership group, or I don't even know who would make that call because Spielman's on the hot seat too. So it would almost have to be an ownership call. That
the Welsh should say you're playing Kellen Mond.
And they traditionally don't meddle like that, so I don't think that's going to happen. Now, Mond looked completely in over his head on those 3 plays. From his deer in the headlights look on his face to almost throwing a pick six.
Right.
It was really bad. I don't know how much, if we did a pie chart of why did Kellen Mond look like that, I don't know how much of it's on him for just not picking it up throughout the season, how much of it's on the coaching staff for not preparing him, how much of it's just on the draft pick.
In his defense.
Well, he hadn't
prepped.
taken snaps with the team, and and getting the timing down and stuff. But he should be. I think some of the criticisms that I'm sort of hearing whispers about are that he's not picking up the playbook like maybe he should. Some of that stuff's probably on him. I think if he starts against the Bears, it's going to be a disaster, even on a full week of practice. And then we can do a postmortem on like whose fault is that.
Yeah, but I want to see it. Show it to me. Let's see it.
The final piece of this year's
you
puzzle
need
is I want
us to make decisions. Yes.
I want to see an 11 for 38 performance from Kellen Mond.
We saw
5
Josh
interceptions.
Freeman. We saw if you have seen Josh Freeman start the game against the Giants in Jersey, can it really be worse?
Well, I mean,
I saw the Tavares Jackson start in Green Bay. It was one of the worst starts I've seen.
That was bad.
Spurgeon Wynn played, okay? Kellen Mond. Free Kellen. Hashtag free Kellen. Free the Mond.
All right, statement number 1 from me. Mike Zimmer and Kirk Cousins are frauds who almost exclusively only win games against losing teams. Now, I get last night, Kirk didn't start, and so that loss doesn't go on his win-loss record. But I did some number crunching this morning. Also, thanks to our friend MN Researcher on Twitter for initially doing this first round of research before the season. But so the Vikings are on track to finish 2-7-ish against teams that finish the year with a winning record. Like, we know the Cardinals, you can put there's a couple teams like the Ravens and the Steelers, they play each other that are, I think they're both 8-8, but the Vikings are tracking to be 2-7 this season against winning teams. Mike Zimmer in his career against winning teams is now 19-46.
Wow.
That's a 29% win percentage. It's far worse than the worst like the best coaches are above 500 against winning teams, like the Andy Reids, Bill Belichick, Mike Tomlin, etc. But like that record is worse than Bill O'Brien since Mike Zimmer got hired, worse than Jason Garrett, other guys that have gotten fired. It's kind of close to Jake Ruden's record against teams that finish above 500, so that's bad. Kirk Cousins is even worse in his career, and I get that last night's game doesn't go on his resume, but Kirk Cousins versus winning teams is now 9-41 in his career. 18% is the math there. 9-41.
That's remarkable.
That's among the worst in the NFL over the last 20 years. It's worse than Sam Darnold, Mitch Trubisky, Drew Lock, Marcus Mariota.
It's not Kirk's fault.
A lot of people say that.
It's not your fault, Kirk. It's not your fault.
Facetiously.
It's not your fault, Kirk.
Yeah, but what if you? But what if you
give him a clean pocket?
I saw Declan praising Joey Burrow. Why don't you give Joey Burrow the coaching staff, weapons, offensive line, defense, stadium, facilities, shower, and food and nutrition that
At Cincinnati.
The Bengals practice underneath the freeway. They literally practice underneath a freeway.
For context, Andy Dalton has twice as many in terms of winning percentage against winning teams. Andy Dalton is twice as good in those games as Kirk Cousins is. So, again, Mike Zimmer and Kirk Cousins together do not beat winning teams. It's bad.
Woof.
I don't know how much more you guys need to see, but yeah.
All right, my first statement is know your attachment style. You guys familiar with the 3 stages of attachments in relationships? You guys familiar with these 3 stages?
It sounds right up my alley. Like this should be like part of a Bachelorette episode, but I am not familiar.
I learned this in therapy, but it applies to the Vikings too. So
is it like codependency? Is that
kind of?
Okay,
kind of. So the 3 stages are secure, anxious, and avoidant. Those are the three stages of attachments in relationships.
Sounds like marriage.
Yeah, it's very, very similar to marriage, and similar to, you can apply this in your romantic life, your personal life, work life, however you want to do it. I'm going to apply it to the Vikings here and use a couple caveats as who's and where, okay?
Love it.
So the Vikings ownership are in the avoidant attachment stage, which goes into 2 categories, dismissive and fearful. Dismissive of probably achieving their big goal, of wanting to be a better football team, and fearful of bottoming out, right? Fearful of being the Jets, fearful of being the Browns from this decade. They're fearful of what that could possibly cost for their bottom line, for the perception. It's an avoidant kind of attachment style.
So they don't want to be lonely.
Right.
They fear do they fear being alone?
I think it's more of, also what avoidants tend to do is they'll kind of creep along, and then once there is a caveat or something happening, they remove themselves from the situation. They don't want to then secure and attach themselves to that person. Perception to the public. That's an anxious kind of person in a relationship. They take everything personally. Everything personally.
The Kirk Crusaders, yes.
Yeah, it is, and even all of them. How we've seen them, it's terrifying when you really put it like that, because they have hopes to the potential without seeing the forest through the trees. So they have a fear of being alone. So when you hitch your wagon to someone, it's safe and it's comfortable. Like the Vikings fans have this three-headed dragon they try to defend, in either Zimmer, Spielman, or Cousins. It's mostly Cousins, and anxious partners will play games with one another to get the other person's attention, and it works. That's an anxious attachment style. That is 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and also using leverage to try to get someone to get something out of them. That's an
Sounds
anxious
very
attachment.
toxic. Sounds like a
It's
toxic,
extremely toxic.
Well, that's
toxic
Kirk.
relationship.
I have found
perfect.
myself in numerous anxious attachment styles relationships, okay? Numerous anxious attachment styles. But what you need is a secure relationship, right? That's Belichick and Mac Jones, Stafford McVay, Brady Arians, Sean Payton and Drew Brees from back in the day, right? There's trust. There's not fear. There's no anxiousness. There's
John
no avoidance.
Harbaugh, yes.
Yeah, like it's accepting too that when an issue arises, you discuss it, you handle it, and you become better for it on both sides. There's no accusing, there's no game, there's no avoidant. It's a community effort. That's what Vikings fans and the team, the organization is missing. They don't have a secure relationship with one another. You have ownership who are avoidant and fans who are anxious.
Love it.
So if given a choice, would you put the Wilfs, Zimmer, Spielman, and Cousins through a therapy session, or would you just fire everyone and start over?
Oh, I think I'd fire them all. I don't think it's salvageable. I don't think that the problem is
Therapy can't save the
It's dysfunctional. It's dysfunctional and it's poisonous. Got to clean out the room, gentlemen.
I guess if like I'm the Wilfs, I'd be the ones that go to therapy, but everyone else can go away.
Yeah,
But I mean,
you
your points are great though, because like the Wilfs would need to understand fully where they're coming from before they address the rest of it.
Yeah, you got to clean up your own house. You got to
Yeah.
get yourself in order before you got to love yourself before you can love someone else.
Bingo.
Do the Wilfs love themselves? That's the question here. Live,
That's
laugh,
awesome.
love.
Good job, Dex. Live, laugh, love. What is the? Welcome to our house, the TCO Performance Center, where we're going to hang a sign that says "Live, laugh, love" outside.
Trade cut. Yeah, trade cut, accept. One of the two.
All right, back to Judd here.
Okay, speaking to the Kirk stands here, as Phil so adeptly calls them, the Cousins Crusaders. My statement is this: Mannion's play has and had nothing to do with Kirk. So we all saw the tweets last night started to pour in from the Cousins Crusaders about, well, now you see what you get when Kirk doesn't play. Do you like this now?
As if Mannion is the only replacement for this
Right.
is life without Kirk. See what you get? You
And
get Sean Mannion 100 times out of 100.
And somebody shot back with, how stupid do you think we are? We're not picking Sean Mannion to replace Kirk Cousins, you morons. This isn't about like, well, oh my God, you're going to have to bring back Mannion next year and he's your starter. That type of attitude is it's so much the whole Cousins brigade thing of people that are just there to defend him. And I don't even know if some of the people defending him care about sports. I don't even know if some of those people care about football. I think some just care about what Kirk in their mind stands for. And the reality is, no, if you were to find a good quarterback in the draft and let's say had him under team control for basically 5 years at a cut rate price and could build around him, that's the entire point. So nothing you saw last night was, well, this is what the Vikings will look like without Kirk. So just stop with it. Please stop.
Yeah, there's the using Mannion as a barometer for boosting Kirk up. It's like Mannion is one of the 3 to 5 worst. I think he's the worst backup quarterback in the league. But he's one of the 3 to 5 objectively worst backup quarterbacks in the NFL. He is not the bar by which you measure how good your starting quarterback is.
Send me to the bar.
It's a huge indictment on the organization that they have that wide of a gap. I mean, Vegas literally adjusted that point spread 7 points. You almost never, if Tom Brady goes out, they might not adjust the Bucs line 7 points. It's bonkers how much that line moved because the gap between Cousins and Mannion is so wide, and it's more of an indictment on Mannion than it is like some credit to Kirk Cousins. But whenever we sit here and talk about, okay, yes, Cousins on his best day is like the 8th best quarterback in the league, probably settles in around the 12th best quarterback on his worst day or against pressure or late in games. He's definitely outside the top 20. So all things considered, he's definitely top 15-ish, probably between 10 and 15. And people think about that as if it's like some sort of banner to be hung or like, why would you want to get rid of that? There's only 32 teams in the league. Having the 12th best quarterback doesn't guarantee you anything, especially when he makes the 3rd most money to the salary cap. So, like, this idea that, like, well, who are you going to find to replace him? He's already he's a fringe top 10 guy. Who are you going to find? Every single year, guys get drafted, become viable starting quarterbacks. Guys get traded for. You find a way. There's Gardner Minshew's out there that can do the job for $35 million less and help you build the rest of your roster. Like, I'm so sick of this. So. Like, what are you supposed to do? How are you supposed to find someone else? I don't know. How did every other team in the NFL find quarterbacks that at times have been much better?
Mannion or bust.
How did the Chiefs find Pat Mahomes?
No other choices.
How did the Bills find Josh Allen?
Don't know what you're talking about.
How did the Eagles find Jalen Hurts?
You've got Sean Mannion.
$600,000.
He is your starter next season. If you don't have Kirk, nothing you can do about it.
Sorry, there's no other option. Ridiculous. All right, got so many different potential statements. I'll go with this one. Mike Zimmer showed how much he has devolved as a leader when he threw Kellen Mond under the bus. We heard that clip after the game. I mean, that was a man who took off his fake leader mask and was just himself, as true as he can be.
Scooby-Doo?
Pretty much, yes.
We'll find out who the real Mike is now.
It's Mike Zimmer.
It's Mike
Coach Zimmer.
Yep. I mean, he had a chance to go up there and take the high road, and when asked about Kellen Mond, he could have said any number of things. He could have said, we'll make a decision this week. We're going to sort through our quarterback situation and make a decision this week. And instead, he took a low-blow cheap shot at a 3rd-round pick rookie quarterback that was thrown into the fire, and thrown into the fire in part because Mike Zimmer and his coaching staff has failed to prepare him. And so, just like the petulance and the pettiness of that shot at Kellen Mond and indirectly at Rick Spielman showed me everything I need to know. Like, this dude is a fake leader. He's a defensive coordinator masquerading around as a leader of a 53-man roster. And the Vikings need an actual leader and someone that can connect with humans and somebody that can put some actual currency into his relationships with quarterbacks. So Mike Zimmer showed how much he has devolved as a leader last night.
And by the way, in the classic episode of What Does It All Mean? So I did go to Kellen Mond's liked tweets section this morning.
Nice.
And a Bleacher Report person quote tweeted that Zimmer quote, said, "This is the most savage thing I've ever heard an NFL head coach say about a player." And Kellen Mond liked the tweet. So Kellen Mond, I mean, obviously he's aware. Like we always say, does he even know about this? But he's aware. He's absolutely aware.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Good for him. He didn't deserve that.
No, not at all.
No, such a weird cheap shot, man. And Alex Boone played for Mike Zimmer for a year, and he has alluded to some things on our show too, just about how it's the way that Mike treats people, that he's just not, he's very cold, he's very frontal, and not in a productive way. He's just like, it's like he doesn't have a filter that I'm mad and crabby, and therefore I'm going to take a dig at someone, either at a podium or behind the scenes. And he doesn't have that filter the leader should have, where, listen, your job in front of that camera and that microphone is to speak on behalf of your team. And if you need to motivate them, sometimes you're gonna rip. But he's just like saying things without a filter. And that's not what a head coach is supposed to do.
And my problem with that is, if you're really that pissed, you're clearly pissed at people that aren't Mond. Mm-hmm. Go after them. Be my guest. Like if you're mad at Kirk, rip Kirk. I don't care. You're going to be fired almost certainly, right? Like if you think Rick is crappy, rip. But I mean, don't rip Kellen Mond. He doesn't deserve that. Like if you're going to be crabby old man, then do it. Go full frontal. Don't rip a kid who played a series and is clearly, Kellen Mond might succeed. He might be a complete bust. No clue. But he's probably the last guy who deserves that. Like if you're mad at Cousins, Kirk was not here for us tonight. I am livid about that. I told you. I told him. Go after him. I'm cool with that. And I think the players would be far more at peace with that, as weird as that might seem, than him ripping Mond, who I'm willing to bet the players were like, really? That's your guy?
Yeah,
like that's really weird.
Again, it's like it's already, the ship has already sailed here, but like that's the type of thing that you can really lose a locker room where it wouldn't shock me if this team laid down against the Bears in Week 18.
I agree with you.
Where like you start to be like, wait a second, you're gonna throw Kellen Mond under the bus, dude? Like,
right.
I could see it. I don't know. We'll see what happens. That was the first game last night. The Vikings were definitely like outmatched, and it was ultimately Sean Mannion versus Aaron Rodgers in 5-degree temperatures at Lambeau Field. So like the game was what it was, but that was the first game where it really felt like the team had checked out and they were completely disinterested from the opening snap. First time all year, maybe first time since the mutiny situation 5 years ago, where they sort of did the same thing but in a different way. All right,
it's a perfect segue because my statement is very simple. It's thank you, Mike Zimmer, but here's the door. After 8 years as an NFL head coach, which, by the way, is damn impressive. 8 consecutive years with one franchise is hard to do in today's NFL. But it's time for the Vikings to say goodbye to Mike Zimmer. It's over. He's done a lot of great things in Minnesota. He was far from a perfect coach, but he was a good coach. A coach who turned around a defense with guys like Josh Robinson and Asher Allen ghosts lingering around as cornerbacks. And he developed some really impressive defensive pieces. He did. He went from, as a Vikings fan, every time the Vikings were on defense pre-Mike Zimmer, I knew, we are not going to get a stop. There's no chance. I have no faith, that they're going to get, a big-time stop here. When Zimmer's defense was at its peak between 2015 and 2018, you had a pretty good confidence they're going to get a key stop here. They always were good in third downs. They were good in the red zone. He changed that entire perception in my lifetime. And for my money, he is the best coach. I don't really remember Denny Green that much. And it's kind of funny because I think both Denny Green and Mike Zimmer's are in the similar bin. Denny being this offensive innovator and this great coach who knocked down barriers for other head coaches in the NFL, and Mike Zimmer being this crusty old veteran who's been around the block for so many years as a coordinator, finally gets his chance in his late 50s to be an NFL head coach, and he turned it to be in a pretty successful tenure. But ever since 2017, when the Vikings were a game away from the Super Bowl, they haven't even been to the championship game since. If you think about the last 4 years, the Vikings have been the top 4 team in the NFC once. When you signed Kirk Cousins, it wasn't this is an upgrade over Case, and we don't know what Teddy is. This was to win a Super Bowl. It was one step forward and then 2 steps back in Kirk Cousins' era. There's always the one step. Here we go. Here's the win streak. Here's Kirktober. Here's a big primetime. You like that moment. And then 2 steps backwards. And unfortunately, that goes under Zimmer. And if the Wilfs cannot realize that it's time for a new head coach, I don't know what else we'll have to see to make that happen. 700 days of being under 500. And when you start losing the defense, which Mike Zimmer has done this season, the defense now 2 years in a row has been putrid. Injuries or not, it's been awful. So thank you, Mike Zimmer. Hell of a run, but it's time for the Vikings to move on.
Yeah. And, we talked about this on Purple Daily today, but Mike Zimmer sort of foreshadowed his firing 4 years ago when he said at the NFL Combine, and this is a few weeks before they signed Kirk Cousins, but this was a major discussion behind the scenes. The Kirk Cousins thing was very much in play when he said this at the Combine. How it affects the salary and how it affects the rest of our football team. It's important for myself and Rick that we pick the right quarterback that's going to help us continue to move forward. If we don't do that, I'll probably be fired. The thing I told Rick was, look, we've won 40 games in 4 years because of defensive football. What I don't want to do is say, okay, we're going to sign a quarterback, and we're going to take away from the rest of the things that have gotten us to this point, meaning a huge chunk of money and you're taking it away from the defense, etc. Worth noting, this is not to defend Zimmer, but it's interesting. Zimmer's winning percentage against teams that finished the season with a winning record was 40% before the Vikings signed Kirk Cousins. It's 20% the last 4 years. And Kirk, by the way, was equally bad, if not even worse, with Washington against winning teams. Of course, none of it's his fault because, Washington has some flaws and the Vikings have some flaws. And so if there's any flaws, you can't overcome them. It's illegal in the NFL and everything is not your fault. But I think Zimmer had a vision and Zimmer had a process and he had a way in which he wanted to be building this thing. And it peaked in 2017. Yes. And they were competitive against winning teams and he was doing it his way. And then the fork in the road hits and those two guys just never worked well together.
And I think the biggest downfall for Mike in this entire thing, post Cousins joining the team, is this one. Inability to develop young defensive players that he did a very good job of when he first got here, right?
Yeah, Xavier.
Because, think about the cornerbacks. Think about, I mean, the fact that they felt forced to bring back Griffin is an indictment on the lack of trust of, hey, no, we've developed guys. So, if you go back to that initial phase where he helped definitely 1,000% take guys who were good and make them great, or who were okay and made them good. Give me the amount of guys after 2018 that he's done that with. It's probably a very small list on the defensive side, and that was his forte.
Yeah, it's weird. It's almost like he either lost his touch or lost interest or just didn't bring him as much joy as it did.
I mean, the Dantzler thing, right? Cam Dantzler's just sort of spun his wheels, and that used to be the type of guy that Mike would take and hone.
And now Dantzler I think he's a starting caliber cornerback. He's going to go from a third-round pick to starting caliber cornerback, so it's not a total failure of a development, but a lot of other guys are. Or they just haven't, lived up to what they may have in Zimmer's first 2 or 3 years. So,
right.
Judd, you have one more statement here before we get to our friend. We got bonus statements too. We can hold off.
I got one real quick though.
Okay.
To go up to the broadcast booth last night. My statement is this: you have to be kidding me. Chris Collinsworth said a lot of things that were Pollyanna about the Vikings last night. But saying, and I quote, Garrett Bradbury is the Vikings' outstanding center might have been the most inaccurate thing I have heard on a broadcast/telecast in the National Football League all season long. What are you talking about?
What do you mean? He had the longest reception of the night for the Vikings offensively.
Well, he might
be,
is a
multifaceted, explosive player.
He might be
don't give him enough credit.
Outstanding fullback. He might be an outstanding underdeveloped tight end, but center. And then Collinsworth went into a whole thing accurately about the fact that guys like Kenny Clark and Akeem Hicks and Donald basically kick Garrett's ass. That's accurate. But he said outstanding center. What are you talking about, dude?
What's weird is that he owns a chunk of Pro Football Focus, which literally grades interior offensive linemen on a level that no other entity does. And they have Garrett Bradbury over the last 3 years as one of the worst offensive linemen in the NFL. His own company.
But he also said
they put those grades on the screen too. I'm pretty sure on Sunday
they do.
Football.
And Collinsworth also said that Sean Mannion looked like he had complete control of the offense.
Well, the handoffs maybe.
But I mean, Chris? What are you talking about? What's happened to you?
Yeah, he definitely
used to be really good, and now it's just all. It's all like sugar-coated crap.
Yeah, it's weird.
Super weird. Yeah.
Anyway.
He did the same thing with Matt Nagy, I feel like, earlier this season, didn't he? The
Great
Monday Night
guy.
Football guys were doing it with Nagy. Just a
great guy.
leader and a great guy. It's
He's going to be fired.
It's cool. Yeah, he'll be a coordinator, quarterback coach or something. So, all right, let's pause here. Let's see if we can track down our friend here, Randy in Cottage Grove. I don't know what direction that's going to go. I don't know what he's been doing.
Last week was weird.
It was weird, man.
Last week got really weird.
Did he cry?
No. Super
He's
positive.
cried like 3. Oh.
Super positive.
It was strange.
After they got shellacked by the Rams.
And called Washington and Philadelphia duds, with Philadelphia now clinching a playoff spot a week later. He called
Washington's a dud.
Washington's a
the
dud.
only
That's
thing he did fess up. The only thing he hadn't been drinking for days And so he had dried out.
Well, that seems like a wise lifestyle.
So I
choice
think
for
that
him.
brought him up. I think that brought him up.
All right, well let's see if we can track him down here, Mackie and Judd.